We've never seen a game catastrophically fail as hard as that game did. I think the biggest problem that I'm seeing with Concord, and I think this is kind of sad, is there's a bunch of people making like really overblown claims about why it died. But like, if we go and look at the game itself and we look at like what happened here, you had a video game that was not marketed really at all. Most people didn't even know it existed. They had no idea. The amount of cost that was spent on it was enormous. Like they spent a shitload of money on this, and it didn't land right with the players when it came out. And that's really all that happened. They're refunding everybody too. Yeah, this is no longer available on the Steam store. PlayStation Network account required. The thing that's really interesting is this doesn't look shit on the outset. It looks like it might be fun. It's kind of like fast-paced and weird, but like people didn't like it. They said it wasn't fun. Yeah, they basically made $0. It had like 100 average players for a game that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Like imagine Overwatch launching to 198 people peak. That's basically what happened here, dude. There had to be something wrong with it mechanically. And the reason why I say that is if people drag it online, it will likely bring a lot more people to go and look at it. People will at least look at it. And if they go, wait a minute, this doesn't suck, then they'll play it. But in this case, they didn't. Like at all. This is probably the most catastrophic failure we've ever seen. Character design was very ugly. I think that's always going to be subjective. I don't think that's... It's easy to say something like that, be like, the character design is ugly. It's like, no, you think the character design is ugly. You didn't like it for you. There's some things in here that people did like. Right? There were some people that are actually talking about the game and said that they thought it was cool. It's like a weird, weird art style, kind of weird environment sort of a thing, but like some people like that shit. At least some people played it. The biggest question that I have is how was this a surprise? Because they had a beta, they had an early access in July. How did they not know that this was failing that early? I guarantee that beta didn't have big numbers. Like this had 198 at peak, dude. They had less than 1,000 pre-orders. That's bad, dude. For everybody that's in chat that's like, investors controlled the deadlines, did that shit come to you in a dream? Are you just like spouting out nonsense that you're stating as fact? If you're gonna make a claim, post a link, show the evidence, because that shit's ridiculous. We're trying to figure out like what actually went wrong here, not just what came to you in a dream. But with this, we don't see anything that's gone wrong outside of their marketing. Their marketing didn't actually show up for anybody. The game was pretty much unheard of. The part that's interesting to me is the fact that they somehow were blindsided by this enough that they went through with the launch, despite running a beta, despite knowing about the pre-orders, despite knowing early on they had a beta in July. That's very strange because they didn't expect to fix anything like the first 1 to 2 months after launch. That doesn't make sense either. You're just wasting a huge amount of time. And to be honest with you, you're also getting a black eye in your entire studio by doing this. There's no benefit in that, especially from like a tax burden situation. Like you probably just be able to, if you cancel the game before it even came out, you can get refunds in some cases, like tax liability stuff, because it is counted as research and development. Like that would make sense. Like some countries will even give you like pretty massive tax breaks for doing that. So I'm very surprised that they brought this thing all the way to launch. There's a huge labor from a lot of insanely talented people making an awesome game. Why would I care about a bunch of talentless freaks hating on it? I'm sure having fun playing it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Yeah, that's not great. That's immediately going to lead into negative reaction from the internet. So they worked on it for 8 years. Yeah, because you have to understand, working in games takes a long time. You may not like the outcome. You may not like the designs or things like that. Doesn't mean it didn't take a long time. The product that came out of this, like what was produced, is not something that people enjoyed. And that's really what it comes down to. This, though, this ends up going really badly. And like, that's unfortunate because to be real with you, I can understand being in a position as a developer being defensive, especially when people are shitting on the thing that you worked on for 8 years. I get it, but you can't say that. So the other thing that's really interesting is these character designs are very, I would say they're kind of like overly colorful, if that makes sense. So like the color clashes all over them kind of look like weird skins. The colors are clashing, and I think that's the problem. This kind of a thing is kind of neat. Weird character design. He's like some kind of a beast man. He's got some kind of like Brainiac thing in his head. I'd like to know more about this, but also it's like it's so overly colorful in the way that it's presented, where you have like a teal, a red, you have another blue in there, and then this like rainbow chrome that goes on. It's just too much. It's too much color. It makes it hard to define a character unless you have like kind of a couple of defined colors for them. But yeah, to be real with you, this game didn't do well. It's not a good look to have the dev or even a former dev talking like that to the general public. It's not helpful. I think it's really important to understand that when you're designing characters, color clashes like this can be really unappealing to people. Yeah, visual clarity is super important. Visual clarity is super important. Visual design is super important because we can compare this to like Zarya. Zarya has like pretty defined colors, and she also has a very colorful flair to her. But the difference is that Zarya's colorful flair is in one spot. It's just her hair. You have a very defined character. You have very muted colors. The colors are all kind of matching across the entire thing, and you have one defined flare color. This has defined flare colors all over the place. Yellow on what looks like a fuchsia, on lime green. Those are not colors that work well together. So it ends up looking like a character custom spray, right? like I colored my own character model sort of a thing. And then also you have the defined color flare here of the bright blue. So you have multiple flare colors.
The
and then
mods
you have,
were fed $5.
Thanks to the 5 extra mods. And then you have colors that don't work well together in a composition. It's too much. It's too much. Too many different colors. And I think that ends up being a problem. We have the same thing on him. So we see the exact same problem here where you have like kind of a defined color of the red. And then you also have whatever this rainbow purple and then like more teal in this. It's just too many colors for it to be a character model that you can like that is eye-catching. It ends up being sort of overwhelming. It's like a mess. I think you could take this same model, you could change the colors, and you could make a dramatically more compelling looking character. Legitimately. I think it's a color theory problem with this one. Because it could look cool. The model's fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the model. There's nothing wrong with this model. I think it's the color composition. I want to look at the rest of the characters because I want to see what was going on with this. Some of these actually look kind of cool. Like this one, totally fine color composition. This character design, dramatically better. Way, way better color composition. Purple and gold always works really well together. Silver hair works really well, especially when you have an older character. Like, looks fine. And then you clash this against this. That character design makes no sense to me. That's all over the place in terms of color composition. All of it is clashing heavily with itself. So like, you do have some characters that color-wise, color theory-wise, look correct, and then ones that just don't. This looks like a skin that I would use on a character that like I earned and is like a disused skin color for it, but it's their primary look for the character. This one looks pretty fine. The gun is strange and interesting. It's got like a stock on it. That's kind of cool. This is another one of like another weird color composition. I do find that a lot of the character designs in this are unlikable for me. I think the reason why I find the character designs unlikable because of the color composition. I don't think it looks bland. I think it looks overly aggressive with its color usage. It's too much. It's just too bright. There's too many colors going on. Some of them could be interesting. Like if you look at this design of a character is quite neat. The eyes are cool. The goggles are cool. The fact that it's like a robot, right, wearing a suit, that would be awesome. But orange and purple and more orange, like beige and bright lime green, it's just like, that's too many colors to make it distinguishable. It becomes a mess. Some of them are also really imaginative. Like they've got a character in here that kind of looks like this. This one, I think, color-wise is kind of fine. I guess You know what it feels like? The more that I look at these, do you know there's like weird skins that you get for characters? Like when you first are playing like any type of shooter, like team-based shooter, you get those weird characters that are like, the skins are just sort of not right. And you're like, I'm never going to use that skin. You like earn it. And you're like, I'm never going to use that one. The like common skins. Every one of these looks like it's wearing a common color composition skin. Every one of them. Where I'm like, I wouldn't use that skin. And some of the models are kind of bland too. Like this one's bland. I guess the way that I would describe this game after looking at the characters, looking at some of the gameplay, is it doesn't look like it's done anything unique that makes it stand out. The characters are a little bit all over the place composition wise, and you're entering a saturated market. I think that's really what it comes down to. You're entering a saturated market, and that's not like great. Like you have to really stand out if you're entering a market like that. I do think it's weird that they went all the way out and did this, and it was like a multiple $100 million game, 8 years of development, and somehow didn't think that something was wrong when they did their beta. That's surprising to me. Quality wise, it seems like a mid game. Yeah, nothing bad, just nothing attractive. Exactly. I think it is unattractive character wise for a lot of these characters. I think for a lot of these characters, they just don't look appealing to me. They look like something where I don't feel like I identify with the character in a way, because it's like circus colors for everything. It's just bright, mashed colors that are not complementary in any way for a lot of the characters. I think what we're seeing here is a design philosophy where they are trying so hard to have a personality for the characters that they went overboard, and they made it so the characters look cartoonish in terms of color composition. By trying to make them look too unique and stand out too much, it's gone into this realm where it's uncanny. That's what it feels like to me, is that they were like, I need to make a really unique looking character. It's really going to stand out. All these different colors. Let's put it all in there. Let's make it like, give it a whole bunch of details. And it's like, you use too many. And they're not complementary colors. They're not colors that work well together. They're very clashing. It does stand out, but not for the right reason, if that makes sense. I guess the best message that I have for the people who are working in Concord is, you made something that sucked. It happens sometimes. You may really believe in it. You may really like the thing you make, but the general public didn't. Whether it was about the game actually being flawed or about it not being the right time, hard to tell, right? It doesn't make those people less good as game developers. It just means that this game that they worked on didn't work. And there's a lot of games that exist like that, thousands of them. Usually, you don't see games of this high profile failing this spectacular. Usually, these things die internally before they make it out to the public. And I think that, for me, is the most interesting part of this, is that this made it out to the public and then died. Do you think it could be salvaged and free to play? If they made it free to play, I think what you would get is you'd get a lot more people that would be interested in engaging with it mechanically. And then you'd find out if it was a mechanics issue or if it was a cost issue in a saturated market. I think it is likely going to be both. And also the third thing of like the characters are not pleasing to look at for a lot of people. So you have kind of off-putting characters, you have mechanical issues, and then you have a cost up front in a market where why would I do that when I can just go play Overwatch for free? I think that the problem that I see a lot of the time with online discourse, dude, is that people say you should either burn it to the ground and salt the earth, or just constantly say that it is the most amazing thing possible and nothing else can compare. There's a middle ground, and that doesn't mean that you're like glazing it. It doesn't mean that you're like shitting on it. You're just like, these parts are bad, these parts are good. I wish we knew more information. That's it. I really dislike the idea of just pitchforking or like just saying that the thing is amazing and perfect. Like none of that shit makes sense. Everything's got flaws. Everything's got, issues, and everything's got positives to it. This one, I think, failed spectacularly for all those different reasons that we just discussed. You can still learn something from that. Rip failed worse than Gollum? Yeah, that's rough.